All right. So hello everyone. My name's Liz. I'm the program manager at Carolina Navigators at UNC Chapel Hill, and I'm here today with three of my students, Grace, Hia, and Emma. And they're going to teach you a little bit about some of the countries that they've studied abroad in or worked abroad in Ecuador, Bangladesh, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And so they're going to give you some background information on those countries, and they're also going to talk about some social movements that have taken place in those countries, which might connect some with what you're studying in civics and economics. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my students.
Hi, I'm Hia. I'm a senior at UNC. I'm studying business and public policy, and I spent some time in Bangladesh last summer. So we wanted to kind of start off the activity by asking you all, what's a social movement? So what comes to mind when you think of that? And you can use the chat, or you can unmute yourselves, or however you want to answer. So yeah, you all had kind of the right idea. A group of diffusely organized people or organizations striving towards a common goal relating to human society or social change. So both the struggle for trans rights and Black Lives Matter are both good examples of social movements. Okay, so then this is Bangladesh. Bangladesh is located right next to India. It's a very small country. The official language spoken in Bangladesh is Bangla. And so the flag there at the bottom is um, green and red. And then Bangladesh has 6 seasons instead of 4. It's one of the most populated countries in the world. It's the number 8th populated country. So if you see the picture in the top right, you can see that's like a train that people are taking to travel back to their villages. And so people are like on top of the trains all across. And that's not uncommon to see. Maybe not that populated, but definitely you'll see like that kind of dense spatial patterns in people. And then the longest beach in the world is located in Bangladesh. It's called the Cox's Bazar. It's a majority Muslim country, and their national animal is the tiger. Okay, so now we're going to get into some social movements in Bangladesh. And the main ones we're going to focus on around are language, human rights, and labor rights. So Bangladesh was actually part of, so back in 1947, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, what we presently know those 3 countries to be, were all actually part of the same subcontinent of India, and it was ruled by the British. And then in 1947, India got independence, and so it separated into um, West Pakistan and East Pakistan, which is presently today Bangladesh, and then India. So on each side of India, you see each region of Bangladesh or each region of Pakistan at that time. And so in 1948, the government of Pakistan ordained Urdu to be the national language of both West and East Pakistan. But the people who were in East Pakistan spoke majority of them spoke the language Bangla and Bengali. And so this sparked a lot of extensive protests among the Bengali speaking people because they weren't able to communicate and they were discriminated against from participating in a lot of political processes and things like that because of this language barrier. So the students organized on February 21st, 1952, and it was met with a lot of violence and murder from the police and the government and army. And so then that day became known as International Mother Language Day. And that kind of prompted the beginning of the independence war of Bangladesh, ended up, um, which Bangladesh ended up winning in 1971 and became its own independent country from Pakistan. So today, these are 3 different countries, but at that time, it was all part of the same. And so these are some pictures of the independence struggle in Bangladesh, and the top picture is a monument that commemorates those who passed away on that February 21st date with the student protests. And then to bring social movements into more of a present day context. So in 2018, there was basically an incident where the there was a bus that was not abiding by traffic regulations and speeding, and he ended up running over two people on the road who he was trying to pick up. But it was later discovered that that bus driver actually didn't have a license, and so it brought up a lot of concern about traffic safety in the city. And so a lot of students started a protest, and they basically covered the entire roads and blocked off the roadways so that cars couldn't move without first being stopped and checked if they had licenses, if they had the proper documentation. And the city was closed down for a long time because of this, which prompted a response in the government about traffic safety reform and having better policies. And even the international community, including the US Embassy and the United Nations, were concerned about the level of violence that these protesters were met with from the government and the army. And then the next slide. And then another prominent industry in Bangladesh is the garments industry. So a lot of your clothes are, if you check your tags, it says made in Bangladesh, especially if you shop from places like H&M, Gap, JCPenney. And the reason that a lot of these factories operate in Bangladesh is because the wage and labor there is very, very cheap. And it's primarily staffed by a lot of women workers, and so there's a lot of room for injustice for these laborers, including low wages, poor working conditions. There was a factory building collapse because called the Rana Plaza because the regulations for buildings were really lax. And then there was also um, widespread abuse, whether that's sexual abuse, assault, wage theft, and exploitation. And so with COVID-19, a lot of factories had to shut down at the onset of the pandemic because they were unable to enforce social distancing there. So that kind of created more unrest among a lot of the workers because of the fact that they weren't being guaranteed wages during this time. A lot of them had families to feed and things like that. And so, what we can do as American consumers is to recognize that where your clothing comes from actually has implications for the people who are creating um, your clothes and who and have are facing a lot of these conditions, and checking which companies have better practices and ensure fair labor standards is a really important step that we as consumers can do.
And the next question is, what issue led Bangladesh to fight for independence? You have A, religion, B, taxes, C, colonialism, and D, language. All right, and here, correct me if I'm wrong, but D, language is correct. And the next and final question is, the largest economic industry in Bangladesh is A, agricultural slash farming, B, textile slash clothing, C, finance slash banking, or D, language. All right, and yes, seems like everyone got that right, I believe. It is B, textile slash clothing.
I can tell you guys are all paying attention.
So as we kind of come to a close, why should I care about social movements? And what can I do? So maybe briefly, if any of y'all want to like share in the chat, like why y'all care about certain social movements, or if you have any thoughts or ideas about what can be done in advocating for social change.